thing like this, they'll save the best for last. And boy, did they ever go in a different direction tonight. So, my favorite bit of home video that my family ever took was shot on Christmas Eve, 1984. In the clip, my mother is behind the camera. My brother is he's a little more than 1. I'm about 4.5. And we're sitting on the stairs with my dad whilst my mother interviews me about what I think Santa Claus is going to bring me that night. And this was a question, needless to say, that I took very seriously. And so when I started to answer her, it was in a very sort of straightforward, matter-of-fact sort of way, but there's this kind of crescendo of building excitement and enthusiasm as ideas sort of struck me from out of the ether. So I said to her, and this is verbatim, I said, I don't know, G.I. Joe maybe, Mr. T. Truck, or his gang, by which I think I meant the A-Team, but who knows? Sitting behind me as I sort of rattled off this list of wishes, my dad first raised his eyebrows and then widened his eyes and then imploded in a sort of hysterical but silent laughter. My mom, who's a very funny lady, delivered in this very sort of cheerful but sarcastic deadpan, so all of these things that you've never mentioned before tonight. When my dad recovered, he piped up from behind me, "It's going to be a very disappointing Christmas." For Gentile kids in North America, Christmas morning is, of course, like the gold standard for childhood magic. It's also the frankincense and myrrh standards. But in that magic is always crouching the threatening form of grave disappointment that comes from the inevitability of realities failing to live up to the extents imagined by the creativity of childhood and most importantly, the avarice of childhood. I remember another early Christmas morning waking up to my horror to find that my aunt, who we lived with, had been given a Care Bears piggy bank in her stocking. I was convinced that this had to be some kind of clerical mix-up. Obviously, this piggy bank was meant for me because I wanted it, and I made this very clear. I stamped my feet, I cried, I begged, all to no avail. Years later, my aunt confessed that she didn't know why she hadn't just given me the piggy bank. And it's a reasonable question, but I'm glad that she didn't. Because we lived together, whenever I passed her room and saw that piggy bank, it was a reminder of the very important lesson that just because you want something in life doesn't mean that you get it because you want it, or because you throw a fit, or make threats, or take it. And if I hadn't learned that lesson, who knows who I'd be today? Maybe I would vote conservative. There's no... So, because we lived in the same house, and because my mother first became very sick and then passed away when my brother and I were still very young, my aunt played more of a maternal role in our lives, which meant that when she had children of her own years later, they were sort of, by dint of that, a bit more brotherly. Although there was a great gulf of years in between us. I was 14 and 16 years older than my cousins. In some districts in the southern United States, I was old enough to be their grandfather. But we, because of that personal, that intimacy, that connection, when my dad left Vancouver, when I was in my early 20s, I began spending Christmas Eves and Christmas mornings with my aunt and her husband, my uncle, and her children, my cousin brothers, who, and I was able to experience that childhood Christmas morning greed from the other side. The first year I showed up with what I thought were decent presents. I got each of the kids two big glossy Harry Potter calendars. Looking back, I can admit, it's a pretty crappy gift. 11 and 12, they're not like the prime day planner years of your life. But I didn't have to wait to arrive at that wisdom. The kids made it pretty clear pretty early in the going that the gifts were no sooner opened than discarded, dropped down on the soft carpeted floor, swallowed up in this avalanche of wrapping paper and merchandise, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars worth of presents that did nothing to satiate the invincible want of childhood. No sooner had they finished with their presents than my cousins launched into a litany of wrongdoings, all of the presents they had wanted that they hadn't received. I was agog at these little monsters they had become, these grabby, greedy kids. My Christmas morning drained of all its joy. I had to rush to fill the void with gravy. And I came away from that Christmas day really disturbed by who it seemed that they were becoming. What kind of teenagers and then men were they on the cusp of becoming? And it was a real dread that I brought to the next Christmas when I arrived with what even I knew were terrible gifts. This was 2004, and I was just properly broke. Like a few years later, I did some back taxes from this time in my life, and I wrote the Canada Revenue Agency and said, I need my records for 2004. And they were like, dude, you didn't do anything. So the presents that I bought that year were basically, what I could find for as close to free as possible in the Little India neighborhood where I was living at Main and 49. So I'm talking like, 50-cent ceramic flower pots. For my cousins, I bought little Hindu religious figures. Which I think was probably, looking back, to give Hindu icons to celebrate the birth of Christ, it's probably offensive in both directions. So I was sitting in just this dread anticipation of how the kids were going to react to the presents, and I was so sort of taken with this dread that I didn't notice at first how much things had changed, that they were opening their presents slower this year, that their eyes were, pie-plated in excitement and gratefulness. They were thankful for all of the presents they got, and they got to the little religious icons, and they were thrilled with them. A few hours later, I heard my littlest cousin bragging to one of his friends. He's like, yeah, and I got this cool, elephant soldier, which was how he described the Ganesha that I had bought him. And it occurred to me, right, kids are ever changing and fickle in both good ways and bad. I thought back to that Christmas morning, 1984, when the video that we took, as I opened the presents, none of which were the things that I had listed as my wishes the night before, and I was fine. I was just happy that we were opening presents. I laid claim to some of my baby brother's stuff, but that seems natural. I guess the point of this very scattershot intergenerational epic is that kids can be just the worst. Like not you guys, but like some of your peers. But it's mostly up to the people who love them whether they stay that way. And so that's why I'm urging you all this Christmas to give your child the joy and the gift of disappointment. Because this year's Christmas disappointment is next year's Christmas miracle. Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Charlie Demers!